who not only had Napoleon Bonaparte as their patron, but then was also bold enough to trick Napoleon. Well, today I want to tell you about a French composer by the name of Etienne Mehul. Etienne was born in 1763 in a small town in France near the border of Belgium. Now, his father was not a musician at all or an educator. He was actually a wine merchant, and this is kind of a big deal because so many musicians at this time that we have looked into, especially this time in history, they were born into music, they were surrounded by music, but he was not at all. He came to fame and he became a prominent musician completely on his own merit. Now, he showed extraordinary musical ability very early on, and by the time he was only 10, he was the organist for the convent. He was the organist for the entire small village. He had started taking lessons with the organist there, and he had a lot of talent, but he also had a lot of discipline, and he was willing to work and practice, and so he got better and better. And so by the time he was a teenager, he moved to Paris. In Paris, he doesn't only study organ, he also studies music theory, and composition. And he learns that music is not only about beauty, it's also about emotion and about drama. And he takes this to heart. While studying in a monastery in his youth, he falls in love with gardening, and that becomes a lifelong passion, and his favorite flower actually ends up being the buttercup. Now, this is just a small little thing, of course, but it does show that beneath this intense dramatic music that he puts out is somebody deeply sensitive to quiet and to nature and to beauty. In the 1780s and 90s, opera is all the rage over in Europe, and he is composing his own, but he's really having a hard time getting them staged. I think a lot of people are writing operas until the French Revolution happens, and then he makes his breakthrough because his operas are very powerful and very exciting, unlike the French Revolution itself. And so during this chaotic and transformative time, he became the leading opera composer of the revolutionary France, because his music captured the energy, the tension, and the patriotism that was happening all around him. So he helps to define the sound of a new France, and he breaks away from the classical tradition, classical music. His music becomes more dramatic, more emotionally intense, and more focused on storytelling. And because of this, many historians say that he was the first romantic composer, coming out of the classical era into romantic era. He became a favorite of Napoleon Bonaparte, who admired his music and commissioned him to write all kinds of things. And he even became a patron of Etienne. Now, one of the things that Napoleon loved actually was he preferred the Italian operas over the French. He thought the Italians were lighter and just more fun. Well, Etienne took a little issue with this because he himself was French. So he wrote a new opera and then claimed that, oh, hey, look, we found this Italian opera that nobody's ever heard of. And so Napoleon listens to it, believing that it's this Italian opera found. And so he goes, oh, it's great, it's so wonderful. And then Etienne goes, ha ha, I tricked you. I wrote it and it's French. But at that point, what was Napoleon going to do? Oh, I don't like it anyway? No. So he tricked Napoleon. He wasn't just expressive, he was also experimental. At one point he writes his opera called Tutelle, and he wants all it to just sound a little darker than normal. So he removed the entire first and second violin section out of the symphony, and he gave all those lines to the viola and the cello just to make it darker, and it works. Audiences and critics found it shocking, but also fascinating. And this influenced people later on, like Hector Berlioz, Felix Mendelssohn, von Weber. All these people I've already spoke to, they're all influenced greatly by the things that this guy was doing. He devoted his entire life to music. He loved intellectual conversations, but especially about music, about the purpose of art in society. He never got married. He seemed to be a very serious human being, but obviously, as we can see with this anecdote of Napoleon, he had some wit about him as well. In his later years, his health began to decline. He suffered from tuberculosis, and in 1817, at the young age of 54, he died. I don't know if that was super young at the time, though, but he passed away. He truly was the bridge from classical era to the romantic era, and he is considered the first romantic composer, even though the romantic era hadn't really started yet. Somebody's got to be the first. He really introduced the idea that we're going to be more emotional, more expressive, and we can do things bigger in music. And as so often, these people that influence many of the composers we do know, many people haven't heard of. Now, if you're in the classical music scene, you have heard of a lot of these, but they're not as well known. But when you're listening to Berlioz or Mendelssohn, just know that you're listening to echoes of people that came before him, like Etienne. So go and listen to something by Etienne Mehul.